You're not locked in. You're just not allowed out. By Colin Fisher. This isn't a story about villains. There are no shadowy rooms, no men stroking cats, no dramatic declarations of tyranny. This is a story about help, because that's how it always begins. Not with force, with assistance. Not with threats, with reassurance. Not with control, with convenience. Everything you're about to hear was done for very good reasons. To protect you, to simplify things, to make life easier. It was all legal. It was all sensible, and most of it was voted for. No one took anyone's freedom away. People handed it over, slowly, politely, and usually while ticking a box that said, "I agree." This is not a warning from the future. This is a story about how close help can get before it becomes ownership. Welcome to the system. You're free to leave, once approved. 1. Just making things easier. It began, as most important national changes do, with a cheerful logo and a sentence that sounded like it had been tested on focus groups until it lost all meaning. We're making things easier, which is never true. Nothing that affects millions of people is ever easier. It's just easier for whoever no longer has to ask permission. The digital ID wasn't introduced as a new idea. That would have required explaining it. Instead, it was framed as a tidy-up, a bit of housekeeping, like finally sorting that drawer in the kitchen that everyone pretends doesn't exist. You already prove who you are everywhere, they said. Online banking, GP appointments, council services that crash the moment you enter your postcode. This would streamline things. One login, one identity, one convenient little key to modern life. And if one identity sounded a bit final, they reassured you that nothing was being replaced. Oh no, your passport still existed. Your driving license still worked. Your birth certificate was still somewhere in a drawer, quietly turning yellow. This was just an additional option. Entirely voluntary. They were very clear about that. Voluntary in the same way a lift is voluntary when the stairs are on fire. At first, nothing really changed, which is how you know something big is happening. The sign-up process was painless. Suspiciously painless. Name, date of birth, biometrics, but in a friendly way. Just a quick face scan, a voice sample, a few questions to confirm you were, in fact, yourself. And who better to confirm that than the state? They already had most of the information anyway. They'd been very careful to remind you of that. You trusted them with your taxes, your medical records, your criminal history. Brief, regrettable, and mostly involving parking. Why not your identity? Besides, nothing bad ever happens when all your information is stored in one place. That's just common sense. The launch adverts were gentle, soft music, diverse families smiling at screens, a woman effortlessly accessing her medical records, a man applying for a job in seconds, someone paying a bill without swearing. Fantasy, obviously, but aspirational. The message was clear. This isn't about control. This is about you. And if you didn't sign up immediately, that was fine. No pressure. It's just that some services began to prefer it. Banks, for example. Not refuse. That would look bad. They just strongly encouraged it. Digital ID meant faster checks, lower fraud risk, fewer awkward questions. Landlords liked it too. Nothing official, just easier, cleaner, less paperwork. Employers followed shortly after. Not mandatory, never mandatory. But if two candidates were equal and one already had a verified digital ID, well, you understand. No one was forced. People simply learned. The government kept reassuring everyone that privacy was a priority, which is always comforting because no one ever mentions privacy. unless they're about to rearrange it. They promised your data was secure, encrypted, protected by world-class systems, which sounded impressive right up until you remembered that the NHS once lost half the country's medical records to a phishing email that began with "Dear Sir, Madam." Still, it wasn't about surveillance. That word made people uncomfortable. This was verification. A much nicer word. Verification doesn't watch you. It just checks. Constantly. Quietly. Forever. They said it would stop fraud, illegal working, benefit abuse, and everyone agreed those things were bad. Very bad. Especially when done by other people. It wasn't about tracking you, it was about tracking the wrong sort, which is always reassuring, right up until you realise no one ever explains who decides what sort you are. At first, the digital ID lived on your phone. That helped. Phones already knew everything anyway. Where you went, what you bought, who you talked to at 2 a.m. when you couldn't sleep. This just made it official. And official always feels safer. You could check your profile anytime. Everything looked normal. Name, status, verified. Access, full. It felt good, actually. Reassuring. Like being waved through at airport security while everyone else queues. No one mentioned that airports are not, traditionally, places you want society to resemble. The system didn't restrict anything. Not yet. It simply noticed. And noticing, they explained, isn't the same as judging. They were very careful about that. Judging sounded moral, personal. The system was neutral, impartial, cold, which is exactly what you want making decisions about your life. You could still live normally, go to work, go shopping, complain about the weather. Freedom was intact, mostly. It's just that, slowly, quietly, the idea of existing without verification began to feel odd, suspicious even. Why wouldn't you want to prove who you are? What are you hiding? And that's when it happened. Not the crash, not the panic, not the controls. Just a small shift in language. You stopped being a person. You became a user. And users, after all, are subject to terms and conditions. 2. Opt-in, obviously. Opt-in is a lovely phrase. It sounds friendly, inviting, like someone holding a door open while quietly checking whether you deserve to walk through it. The government were very proud of that phrase. They repeated it often. Opt-in. Entirely optional. No one is being forced. And that was true. Technically, you could opt out. Nothing illegal about it. You just had to accept that certain things would take a little longer. A bank transfer, for example. Additional checks. Opening a new account. Enhanced verification. Applying for credit. Well, we can't be too careful. Landlords became especially careful. They never said no. They said not yet. Or we'll be in touch, which everyone knows is British for absolutely not, but we'd rather not argue. Estate agents explained it patiently. Digital ID reduced risk, protected everyone involved, made things smoother. And really, if you were legitimate, what was the problem? It wasn't discrimination. That would have required intent. This was efficiency. Employers adopted the same tone. HR departments everywhere discovered a new favourite phrase, for safeguarding reasons. It appeared in emails, policies, training sessions with stock photos of smiling colleagues, and phrases like building trust together. Background checks were quicker with digital ID, payroll easier, compliance simpler, and if a role involved responsibility, which apparently now included stacking shelves, then verification was just sensible. No one wanted trouble, and non-users, fairly or not, looked like trouble. People didn't argue, not really. Arguing takes energy, and besides, everyone was tired. Tired from work, from bills, from being told the world was on fire in increasingly polite ways. Signing up felt easier than resisting, which again was the point. Those who hesitated were reassured. There were safeguards, oversight, independent bodies, panels even. Panels are very comforting. They sit somewhere important and make sure nothing untoward happens. The panels issued statements, very careful ones. They acknowledged concerns while praising progress. They promised transparency, which in practice meant publishing documents no one could understand, hosted on websites no one could find. Privacy advocates raised objections. They were thanked for their input. That's the stage just before being ignored. The system itself remained calm. It didn't threaten. It didn't demand. It nudged. Gentle reminders appeared. Link your digital ID for faster service. Avoid delays by verifying now. Delay became the punishment. Time. Forms that took longer. Queues that moved slower. Calls that ended with, "We'll need to escalate this." Escalation is a fascinating word. It sounds important, but mostly it means waiting. Eventually, even the most stubborn holdouts noticed something else. Social interactions began to change. Friends booking holidays together were asked for verification details. Nothing sinister, just standard practice. One person didn't have it. They became awkward. "Oh, right, we'll sort that." Which meant sorting them out of the plan, not deliberately, just naturally. Like water flowing around a stone. Venues began trialling digital ID for age checks. Faster entry, less hassle, no fake IDs. Perfect. Except now entry was logged. Time stamped. Location confirmed. They insisted this wasn't tracking. It was validation. Different thing entirely. The phrase, "if you've got nothing to hide," made a quiet return. It always does. People repeated it confidently. Because they had nothing to hide, they were normal. And normal people don't worry about systems designed to identify abnormal behavior. The trouble with normal, of course, is that it's a moving target. Meanwhile, cash usage continued to decline. Not banned, just discouraged. Shops stopped taking it temporarily. ATMs disappeared quietly, like phone boxes and employment options. Digital payments were cleaner, safer, traceable. That last one wasn't mentioned as often. Every transaction now passed through the same identity. Your identity. The system didn't judge what you bought, it just noticed patterns. Patterns are neutral. Patterns are maths. And maths, everyone knows, can't be biased. You could still spend freely. Mostly. It's just that certain purchases triggered extra steps. Nothing dramatic, just confirmation screens. Is this purchase necessary? Are you sure? Concerned prompts. Helpful prompts. It was framed as financial well-being. Support. The sort you didn't ask for. The system began offering insights, spending summaries, lifestyle indicators, friendly charts showing how your behavior compared to others like you. And if your habits were irregular, well, that information was stored, not used, just stored, for now. The phrase "for now" appeared often. Temporary measures, pilot schemes, limited trials, always extended, never removed. Some people noticed something else, appeals. When something went wrong, a blocked payment, a delayed transfer, appealing took time. Forms, reviews, automated messages thanking you for your patience. Patience became a requirement. Those who complained too loudly found their issues took longer to resolve. Pure coincidence, obviously. The system wasn't punitive. It was responsive, and responses are prioritized. That's just good management. By the time anyone thought to seriously object, the question had changed. It was no longer, should this exist? It was, why would you live without it? And that's when the markets froze. 3. The crash we were warned about but didn't listen to. The first sign that something was wrong was not panic. It was reassurance. That calm, overly confident reassurance that arrives precisely when you'd rather hear someone admit they haven't a clue. Banks issued statements within minutes. We're aware of an issue. Systems are temporarily unavailable. Your money is safe. Which is always a strange thing to say if it's true. ATMs stopped working, not all at once. That would have been dramatic, just patchy. One here, one there. Little handwritten signs appeared. Out of service. In biro taped on at a slight angle. Which somehow made it worse. Card payments failed intermittently. Shops blamed the network. The network blamed maintenance. Maintenance blamed unprecedented demand. That phrase again. Queues formed. British queues. Quiet, tense, apologetic queues, where everyone pretended not to be worried while calculating how much food was left at home. People discovered something fascinating. They didn't actually know how much cash they had, because for years, cash had been treated like clutter, something to get rid of. Round it up, tap instead. Don't bother with coins. Now those same coins were suddenly precious. A woman in a supermarket held a tenner like it might evaporate. A cashier stared at it, confused. "Sorry," she said, "we don't usually..." She trailed off. Didn't usually what? Accept money. Petrol stations were worse. Some closed outright. Others accepted cash only, briefly, until they ran out of change. Drivers sat in cars, engines off, phones glowing with news updates that all said the same thing. No need to panic, which by that point no one believed. Online banking apps still opened. That was something. Balances displayed reassuring numbers, but transfers failed. Payments hung. Pending became a permanent state of mind. People tried to buy essentials, food, fuel, medication, and discovered that having money and being allowed to spend it were not the same thing. This is where the prepared people stood out. Not dramatically. They weren't shouting, "I told you so," or emerging from bunkers in camouflage. They were just calmer. They had a bit of cash at home, not thousands. Just enough. Enough to buy food. Enough to help a neighbour. Enough to wait. They knew where their torches were. They didn't panic buy batteries, because they already had them. They'd filled the car the day before, out of habit rather than fear. And habit, it turns out, is just preparedness without the paranoia. Others weren't so lucky. Delivery drivers couldn't get paid. Small businesses froze. Tradespeople shrugged helplessly. Can't take payment, mate. As if money had briefly gone out of fashion. Social media filled with arguments. Some blamed hackers. Some blamed foreign powers. Some blamed anyone who'd ever used cash and therefore somehow caused this. The government appeared. Calm, measured, concerned. They thanked everyone for their patience. They praised the public's resilience. They assured people the issue was being resolved. And then, very gently, they introduced an idea. Just as a thought, just as an option. A way to avoid this sort of thing in future. The phrase, "lessons have been learned," was used, which is always comforting because it implies the damage is complete. They explained that legacy systems were fragile, old-fashioned, prone to disruption. What was needed was something modern, unified, secure. A system that didn't rely on multiple institutions agreeing with each other. A system already tested, already built, already linked, the digital currency. At first it was framed as temporary, a stopgap, a way to restore confidence. Payments resumed for those who opted in. Others waited and waited. Appeals lines were busy, very busy. People with digital currency access found transactions went through instantly. No delays, no failures, no awkward conversations at tills. Their phones beeped cheerfully. Life continued. The lesson was subtle but clear. Redundancy mattered. Not because the world was ending, but because systems fail. And when they do, they don't fail evenly. Some people realized, a little too late, that preparedness wasn't about doomsday. It was about dignity, about not being desperate, about having choices when everyone else is told to wait. And waiting, they were learning, was becoming a way of life. 4. The solution arrives immediately. It's remarkable how quickly a temporary solution can feel permanent. Once people are tired enough, the digital currency didn't arrive with fanfare. No grand announcement, no ceremony. It simply appeared. An update to an app, a new option in a menu, a gentle notification that suggested you might like to enable it for uninterrupted service. And after the week, everyone had just had uninterrupted sounded lovely. The government explained it carefully. This wasn't a replacement for money. That would have sounded alarming. It was an enhancement, a safer form of currency, backed by the state, protected from volatility, fraud, and human error, especially human error. They emphasized how fast it was. Instant settlements, no intermediaries, no delays. Which raised the obvious question of what exactly had been causing all those delays before. But no one asked. They were too busy paying rent. Digital currency was linked naturally to your digital ID. That wasn't framed as a requirement. It was framed as common sense. After all, money should belong to someone, and you wouldn't want just anyone using it. The onboarding process was smooth, almost pleasant. A short explanation video, soft colours, friendly icons. A reassuring voice explained how this was about empowerment, about giving you control, which was interesting given how little control you'd had last week. Those who activated it noticed immediate benefits. Transactions worked again. Bills went through. Wages appeared on time. Shops accepted payment without hesitation. Some even stopped taking anything else. Not officially, just practically. Sorry mate, system doesn't support that. The phrase system doesn't support that became incredibly versatile. It covered everything from cash to complaints. Prepared people noticed something else. The ones who'd kept cash, who'd stocked a little extra food, who'd built small buffers into their lives. They had breathing room. They didn't need to enable anything immediately. They could watch, wait, observe, which is a privilege you only notice when you don't have it. Others clicked accept without reading. They'd learned that reading didn't change outcomes. Digital currency balances appeared separate at first, a parallel system. But slowly, quietly, priorities shifted. Refunds were faster in digital currency. Fees were lower. Access was easier. Benefits eventually were paid that way too. Efficiency, they said. And once income arrives in one form, using anything else feels like swimming upstream. People began budgeting differently. The app offered tools, helpful ones, spending insights, environmental impact scores, suggestions. You were encouraged to make better choices, healthier ones, greener ones, more responsible ones. Preparedness, interestingly, wasn't encouraged. Bulk buying raised questions. Unusual purchasing patterns triggered prompts. Nothing confrontational. Just a message. This transaction is outside your normal behaviour. Which felt odd, considering how abnormal the last few weeks had been. Still, the system was learning. It always was. The state reassured everyone this wasn't about control. They said that word again. Control. They stressed that no one was watching individuals. Only trends, only risks, only potential harms. And if your spending aligned with national priorities, you had nothing to worry about. Some people tried to move money out, just in case. They discovered limits, daily caps, monthly thresholds, perfectly reasonable ones. After all, large movements of money could indicate criminal activity, or panic. And panic, they reminded everyone, helps no one. Appeals existed, they always do. But like everything else, appeals were prioritized. And priority, it turned out, was influenced by your engagement with the system, your responsiveness, your history, your reliability. Prepared people adapted, they traded locally, helped each other quietly, shared resources, not dramatically, just enough to reduce dependence. Community, it turns out, is the oldest parallel system there is. Others leaned harder into the new currency. They trusted it. It worked. Why wouldn't they? Until one morning, a few people noticed something new. A small number next to their name. Not labelled, just there. And that's when the story changed. 5. Spending is now behaviour. At first, no one mentioned the number. That was the clever part. It wasn't introduced, it wasn't announced, it simply existed. A small figure, 2 digits, sometimes 3, sitting quietly beside your profile. No explanation, no legend, just there. People noticed it the way you notice a new freckle, with mild curiosity and the vague assumption it had always been there. Those who asked were reassured. It wasn't a score. Scores sound competitive, judgmental. This was an index, an indicator, a reflection of engagement, which apparently was very different. The system needed a way to ensure stability, to reward responsible behaviour, to identify risk. All perfectly reasonable goals if you didn't think too hard about what risk meant when applied to a person. The index adjusted subtly, up a little, down a little. No alerts, no warnings, just movement. People compared notes. Quietly. I'm on 87. Oh, I was 90 last week. They laughed. You laugh at things that make you uncomfortable. The changes didn't seem random. Those who paid bills on time saw improvements. Those who made approved purchases stayed steady. Those who travelled less, complained less, and agreed more, tended to do well. Others weren't so lucky. Someone's score dipped after attending a protest. Nothing illegal. Completely peaceful. But the system, it turned out, was very good at recognizing patterns of dissent. That phrase appeared in a report later. Patterns of dissent. As if disagreement were a virus. Spending became thoughtful. People hesitated before buying things. Not because they couldn't afford them, but because they weren't sure how they'd be interpreted. Alcohol purchases triggered prompts. So did books, certain books. Bulk food orders raised flags. Preparedness, once again, looked suspicious. Why would anyone need so much rice? Why so many batteries? What scenario were you anticipating? The system didn't ask out loud. It just noticed. And noticing, by now, carried consequences. Those with lower numbers found friction everywhere. Loan approvals took longer. Travel bookings required extra verification. Some services simply became unavailable, not denied. Unavailable. Which felt better somehow, like it wasn't personal. High-index users enjoyed perks, faster processing, lower fees, priority support. No one called it privilege. It was incentivization. Encouraging good behavior was far more effective than punishing bad. Everyone agreed on that, especially those benefiting from it. Prepared people adjusted again. They stopped putting everything through the system, traded skills, exchanged favors, helped neighbors without recording it, which felt oddly rebellious. The state responded with guidance. Community engagement was encouraged, but unregistered exchanges were discouraged. For safety reasons, someone had to be accountable. And accountability, as it turns out, requires visibility. The index began to appear in unexpected places. Rental applications, insurance quotes, school placements. Always quietly, always politely, never explicitly blamed. If your index improves, you may wish to reapply. Which was British for behave better. People tried to improve their numbers. They attended approved events, shared positive messages, avoided negativity. Sarcasm, it turned out, was difficult for the system. It struggled to tell the difference between humour and hostility, so it treated both the same. A whole generation of British understatement became a liability overnight. Some people slipped through the cracks. Glitches, errors, mistaken associations. Appeals were lodged, reviewed, sometimes resolved, sometimes not. The system apologized automatically. It was very good at apologizing. What it wasn't good at was forgetting. Preparedness took on a new meaning. It wasn't just about supplies anymore. It was about options, about being able to function when the system frowned at you. Because the frown didn't come with sirens, it came with inconvenience. And inconvenience applied consistently changes behavior far more effectively than fear. By the time anyone said the word social credit out loud, it was already considered inaccurate, outdated. This wasn't social, it was civic. And civic responsibility, everyone agreed, was something good people didn't object to. Until one morning, a man woke up to find his travel pass suspended. No warning, no explanation. Just a message, access restricted pending review. And that's when people realized something important. The system didn't need to arrest you. It didn't need to silence you. It just needed to pause you. 6. Life managed. The travel pass came back 3 days later. No explanation, no apology, just restored. Which somehow felt worse, because it confirmed what everyone had begun to suspect. The system didn't need to justify itself. It only needed to function. Restrictions became routine, not sweeping bans, nothing dramatic. Just small adjustments. Daily spending caps that varied without explanation. Routes that occasionally became unavailable. Services that worked yesterday but didn't today. People learned not to ask why. Why implies dialogue. This wasn't a conversation. This was a process. Official language adapted. You weren't restricted. You were paused. You weren't punished. You were under review. You weren't controlled. You were supported. Support, it turned out, could be withdrawn. Prepared people coped better. Not because they were smarter, but because they weren't entirely dependent. They had routines that didn't require permission. They walked instead of tapping in. They cooked instead of ordering. They spoke face-to-face instead of posting. None of this was illegal, it was just inconvenient, which by now everyone understood was the preferred method. Community tightened. Quietly. People shared resources again, not through apps, not through platforms. Just conversations. The system tried to encourage approved community channels, official forums, verified groups. They were very friendly, very monitored. Unofficial ones felt safer, which was ironic given the messaging. Employment became conditional, not explicitly, but contracts began including clauses. behavioral alignment, reputational risk. Your index followed you, like a shadow, always there, always adjustable. Some people adapted enthusiastically. They learned the system, played it, shared the right things, bought the right products, expressed the right opinions. They did very well. Others withdrew. Not dramatically, they just shrank. Fewer interactions, fewer transactions, which the system interpreted as disengagement. And disengagement, apparently, was risky. Healthcare access was never denied. That would have caused outrage. It was just prioritized. Appointments were allocated based on need, they said. Need, it turned out, was influenced by responsible behavior. Missed appointments didn't help. Neither did non-compliance. Prepared people noticed something else: the importance of skills. Knowing how to fix things, grow things, make do. Not because society had collapsed, but because society now required approval. And approval could be slow. People who could function offline, even partially, had space. Others waited and waited. The appeals system expanded. More validation, more forms, more guidelines. Resolution times increased, which was impressive considering how low expectations already were. Those who pushed too hard found themselves flagged. Excessive complaints, unconstructive feedback, a lack of civic trust. That phrase appeared quietly. Lack of civic trust. It sounded like a diagnosis. Some people left. Not officially. They just disappeared from the system as much as possible. It wasn't easy. Travel required verification. Housing required scores. Work required alignment. Leaving felt like swimming against a tide that followed you inland. Preparedness at this stage wasn't about escape. It was about resilience. About not being desperate. Because desperation makes people compliant. And compliance, everyone could now see, was the system's favourite metric. By the time anyone thought to protest, the problem wasn't force, it was fragmentation. Some people were doing very well, others weren't. And when survival depends on your score, solidarity becomes expensive. The state issued another statement. They always did. They praised the system's success. Crime was down. Efficiency was up. Public trust, according to the data, had never been higher. The data didn't include the quiet, the hesitation, the way people stopped speaking freely even in their own homes. Because microphones, after all, were everywhere. And then, finally, the truth settled in. Not as panic, not as outrage, just a dull, heavy understanding. You could still do almost anything, as long as the system approved. 7. You agreed to this. There was no moment when the truth was announced. No press conference where someone finally admitted it had gone too far. That only happens in films. In reality, the truth arrived slowly, as most uncomfortable things do. It arrived in the wording, in the way officials spoke about the system. They stopped saying introduced. They started saying maintained. Stopped saying temporary. Started saying foundational. Foundational is an interesting word. It suggests something you're standing on while quietly removing the ladders. When concerns were raised, and they were occasionally, the response was calm, measured. You agreed to this. The terms were clear. The consent was given, which was technically correct. You had clicked accept. Everyone had. Somewhere between needing to get paid and wanting to buy food. Consent had been given under pressure. But pressure, they explained, doesn't invalidate agreement. That would set a dangerous precedent. People searched for the moment they could have stopped it. The vote, the petition, the article they meant to read but didn't. It was also reasonable at the time. each step defensible on its own, fraud prevention, efficiency, stability. No single decision felt like surrender. That's how surrender works now. No tanks, no boots, just updates. Prepared people reflected on this quietly. They remembered when preparedness had been laughed at, called paranoid, extreme. Now it looked less like fear and more like foresight. They hadn't prepared for collapse. They'd prepared for dependency, for systems that don't fail loudly but narrow gently. They'd kept cash when told it was obsolete, maintained skills when told they were inefficient, built relationships when told platforms were enough. Not because they distrusted everything, but because trust without backup is just hope. And hope, they'd learned, is not a strategy. The system continued to improve. It always was. Metrics refined, algorithms adjusted, control became smoother, more humane, which was, in its own way, the most unsettling part, because cruelty had never been the goal. Order was predictability, a population that didn't need to be told what to do because it already knew. People still lived, still laughed, still loved, but always with an awareness, a sense of being seen, not watched, assessed, and when someone asked, usually late, usually quietly, "How did we let this happen?" The answer was simple. We didn't let it happen. We accepted help from the state while they smiled. Closing moral. If there's a moral here, it's a simple one. The state never arrives saying, "We are here to take your freedom." It says, "We are here to help. Help you stay safe. Help you spend responsibly. Help you travel correctly. Help you think properly." And every time it helps, it takes something small, not all at once, just enough that you don't notice. Freedom isn't usually stolen. It's traded for convenience, for comfort, for the reassurance that someone else is in charge. So when you're told something is optional, when you're told it's temporary, when you're told it's for your own good, pause and prepare. Because help that demands obedience isn't help at all. And any system that requires your freedom to function was never designed to protect it. Don't trust the state when it says it's here to help. It never has been. While you have been taking part in this broadcast, your listening time has been recorded and has been noted. Thank you for your cooperation. Your account remains active. No action is required at this time. Your recent engagement has been logged for service improvement purposes. If you believe this message was sent in error, please be aware that no reply is necessary. Thank you for your continued participation. With that short statement, did that not sound controlling? Thank you for taking the time to listen to our short broadcast. If you have a story that you would like us to add to our PPFM productions, then you can send them to ppfmbroadcast@gmail.com. If you liked what has just been put to you, could you be so kind as to leave us a like, possible share and subscribe? If you would like to leave a comment, that's okay, as it will not be linked to your credit score. This time,